Is there something in your patriarchal blessing, or maybe in the blessing of someone that you know and love, that is confusing, maybe doesn't make sense? Well, today we're going to be talking about perplexing patriarchal promises that have proven to be powerfully perfect. Let me show you. The topic comes as a result of the last video that we put together about lineage. Being of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. If you haven't seen that one, we'd encourage you to watch it. There's a link that we're going to put right there. But it gives you an idea of who you are now, what the Lord has for you to do, and a glimpse backwards into who you were before you were born, why you would be born into that lineage. Well, that video has prompted a lot of questions in the comments below, which we're appreciative of. Thanks for the compliments that we've received also. But those questions we've kind of grouped into three categories. We're not going to cover them all in today's presentation, but they group kind of like this. Birthrights and tribes. What's a birthright? You know, why am I in a tribe? What does it mean that I'm in that tribe? Ephraim, what's his role today? Why are there so many Ephraimites? And today's topic, we'll cover these later in upcoming videos. Hope you'll watch for those. But perplexing patriarchal promises. And what I mean by that, these are promises that seem uninspired. It's like, I think the patriarch missed it on that one. Or they seem unfulfilled. That's never happened. Or they seem preposterous. That never will happen. We're going to take experiences from the lives of three people and their blessings and show you how all three were fulfilled. Okay? We're going to start with uninspired promises. This is an experience shared by President James E. Faust, a former member of the Quorum of the 12, and later in the First Presidency, who shared this from his father's patriarchal blessing. He said, "This was well illustrated in my father's patriarchal blessing. He was told in his blessing that he would be blessed with many beautiful daughters." That sounds wonderful. However, he and my mother became the parents of 5 sons. No daughters were born to them. Well, now that's a little perplexing, right? Then he goes on to say, "Some years ago, when we had a family gathering, I saw my father's daughters-in-law, granddaughters, and great-granddaughters moving about, tending to the food and ministering to the young children, the elderly, and the realization came to me that my father's blessing literally had been fulfilled. He has indeed many beautiful daughters." So sometimes those things that perplex us are because we think of it this way, and the Lord's going, no, I meant it this way. Well, how about unfulfilled promises? I think one of the greatest examples that we have is in the Old Testament with the story of Joseph and the coat of many colors. Hope you know that story. We're going to go through it quickly here, but it's one of my favorites. Joseph gets this coat of many colors, favored by his father. His brothers hate him to the point where, especially when he begins to tell them about these dreams that he's been having, that his brothers will give obeisance, they'll bow down, his sheep will be bowed down by the other sheep. And then tells them about his dream with stars, the moon and the sun that also bow down to his star. That doesn't score any points with them, to the point where they actually want to kill him. And then Judah comes up with the idea of selling him to the Ishmaelite as a slave. He's taken into Egypt. You know the story. Potiphar buys him. He starts as a slave and then rises to prominence in Potiphar's house. He also rises to prominence in the eyes of Potiphar's wife, who makes advances. He refuses repeatedly, to the point where Potiphar's wife becomes angry, claims that he's made advances, and Joseph ends up in prison. Well, where are all the blessings? Looks like every step is a step backwards, not forward. What would you be thinking now? Or What would his father be thinking when the brothers concoct the story of Joseph's been devoured by some evil beast? They tear the coat of many colors in shreds, put blood on it, and then come home and report to Jacob, who says, I will go to my grave mourning the death of my son. You have here Benjamin, his youngest brother, Joseph's younger brother, weeping at the loss of his older brother. Now, what's Jacob thinking now about those promises? And then, of course, it turns around when Joseph gives an interpretation to the dreams of the butler and the baker successfully, correctly, and then is called into the courts of Pharaoh, where he tells them of Pharaoh's dream and interprets that to Pharaoh, and is made second only to Pharaoh in all of Egypt. And the wonderful part of the story that I love, where he's reunited. Jacob says, my eyes thought that I'd never see you again. And then he comes and is reunited with him and his brothers. They come at peace with one another. And all of those unfulfilled promises are fulfilled to the letter. It's a great story. Well, how about the last category? Preposterous promises. This is a story from a person I know quite well. In fact, I know this person intimately because it's my story. It's a story about my life. So let's go back a few years. Whoa, too far. There we go. We'll go back when I was age 17, got my patriarchal blessing. And some wonderful things. I was told that I would serve a foreign mission. That came to pass. Served in Germany. Some wonderful things that have been fulfilled, but there were two parts that to me were indeed preposterous. It's when the blessing said this, the patriarch said this, your parents will support you on your mission and be proud of you. Well, that's something that every patriarch would probably say, right? Only that wasn't the case with my parents. My parents were not active. My father was atheist. They were opposed to the church, and they were angry about my considering a mission call. They didn't want to talk about it. There were people that would come up to my father and say, hey, when's Tim's farewell? And he would say, you want to talk about Tim's farewell, you go talk to him. At the dinner table one night, my father turned to me and said, where are you going to get all this money for your mission? I said, well, I've saved enough for about half, and then I'll just write the bishop and ask for, no, I don't want any of my kids going to the bishop for money. He said, when you run out of money, you write me. I'll send you the money, but you're going to pay back every cent. Because I'm not going to give you anything that I don't give the other kids. I said, I think that's fair. Well, halfway through my mission, I ran out of money, write my dad. I say, I'll track every penny, Dad. Toward the end of my mission, my dad sent me a message in which he said this, and when you get home, don't worry about paying me back. Things aren't so bad here that they couldn't be worse. My father I had great parents. My father had a wonderful sense of humor. He just didn't like the church. Well, when I got home, I was surprised even more. I'd been home about 3 or 4 days. Dad had saved me a job where he worked, got me back on again, and I knew one of the guys in the back shop. He pulled me aside and he said, Tim, I need to talk to you for a second. I said, okay. He said, you're never going to believe what your dad just said. I said, well, what did he say? He said, I went up to him, I said, hey, Charlie, what's it like having Tim home from his mission? Your dad said, I'm pretty proud of my son. Those promises were preposterous to me. I never believed it. I just thought it's something that the patriarch said to everybody, okay? But that they would never come to pass in my life. And they were fulfilled to the letter. So let me close with a quote I absolutely love about blessings and promises. It's a quote from Elder Jeffrey R. Holland, one of the former members of the Quorum of the 12, whom I also love. He said this, some blessings come soon, some come late, and some don't come until heaven. But for those who embrace the gospel of Jesus Christ, they come. And I add my testimony to that. I have watched them fulfilled to the letter in my blessing, and promises we're faithful. Sooner or later, they'll all be fulfilled. Join us next time. Thanks for watching.